You know, I've been working with him for almost 30 years. You know, he's an enormously talented composer, probably the greatest film score composer of our generation.
He's a really nice guy. He's a really nice guy. I've been lucky to work with him for a long time, for maybe, I don't know, 12 or 15 years, or maybe more now.
I greatly appreciate his talent and the work that he's brought to all of these films.
I just always know that my mind is going to be blown when I hear his stuff.
His flexibility and musical genius is well known by all. He's a gentleman, he's a pro, he's easy to work with. Everyone that works with him is a pro and excellent at what they do. It's a great experience. It's always fun to work with John.
Hey Reddit, I'm Dan Thompson.
This is Pat Sullivan.
Hi Reddit, I'm Sean Murphy.
I'm Tom Lasky.
I'm a recording engineer at Skywalker Sound. I work on the scoring stage there.
I'm a mastering engineer.
I work in product development for Sony Masterworks.
Ask us.
Ask us anything.
Anything.
Well, with John Williams, we don't layer. Everybody records at one time. John's orchestrations are such that our best shot is to get a live representation of what he's written. Because of that, we are typically doing live mixes or close to live mixes, and we are not adorning them with anything other than a little bit of reverb and equalization. His composition, his writing is complete. He doesn't use orchestrators generally. He balances on the stage the way he wants it to sound, and he will check with me in terms of a playback. Is it what he wants? And if it's what he wants, that's what we stick with. We do not use samples. We do not use multiple takes other than for editorial purposes and performance, but we don't layer. We rarely overdub. I think the only time I can tell you that we did much in the way of overdubbing was a heavily percussive section in Lost World or Star Wars 1 or 2, where we had a lot of percussion, where we did that separately. Well, we use multiple reverbs typically. We use a short, dense reverb to sort of fill the spaces between the instruments, and we use a longer reverb to create a tail. We use it judiciously for film music because we don't want the reverb to overcome the direct sound in terms of competition with sound effects or dialogue on the screen. We want the picture to represent the music on the screen accurately. So multiple reverbs typically, not too much. Typically, for classical recording or for soundtrack recording, we typically add a little bit more reverb. For the CD, typically a little bit more as well, because we want to make sure that there is a good clarity and a good accuracy in the music representation versus the sound effects and dialogue on the screen.
It would be Ben. It would be Ben Burt's synclavier, who was a synthesizer been around, still used by Ben and a few others down there at Skywalker. It's a synthesizer designed by a company called New England Digital. It has the capability of sampling, and it's basically a keyboard, but it's very usable. You can do a lot of things with it. I mean, if we're talking overall score, I would say Lawrence of Arabia is absolutely my favorite score. It just takes me on a ride.
The first thing I thought of is when I was mastering the War Horse score, there were just certain moments in that score where I stopped working and started just to listen. There's some string chords that were just amazing, and I just stopped and just enjoyed what I was hearing.
Well, the workflow, of course, audio techniques and equipment changes about every 6 months. And certainly the techniques in music recording have gotten to be a lot more complicated, and production has gotten to be a lot more complicated in the last 10 or 15 years with the use of samples and the use of synthesized sounds and the use of overdubs. None of this applies really to John Williams. It applies to some other composers I work with. So Complicated, yes. More machinery, yes. More tracks, yes. More time involved in preparation, yes. Sometimes a lot more fun to deal with all this complex material because it's a challenge to get it to sound great on the screen, and that's fun. That's what we do. That's a fun thing to do. 30 years ago, probably we were dealing with a much more simple technique of orchestra recording and a few other elements that would accompany it. And now, hybrid scores are common, and we're doing a lot of production with our scores in terms of orchestra plus other elements. So lots more complicated now than it used to be. George just sits there with us at the console, and he deals with the composer in terms of the music recording. Now, in terms of the dub, because I did work on the dub of Star Wars 1, then he's involved as a director, and he gives notes in terms of the overall mix of dialogue, sound effects, and music as a director would. But that's to everyone in the room. That's to the editors, that's to the other mixers, that's not just to me. So for the music recording, George deals with John, and if there's a discussion about sound quality, we all join in, but the communication is primarily with the composer. The biggest challenge in recording these scores is continuity. The fact that, especially even in a 3-week scoring session, that you're scoring for a few days, then mixing, then editing and scoring, is to make sure that you are maintaining good continuity between performances and between sonic quality, so that editorially you can cut things together. You may have a cue that's been rewritten several times, but you're going to use portions of every version, and so you have to be able to cut it together. The continuity in performance, in terms of orchestra setup, in terms of levels, in terms of all the technical elements and the mix elements have to be consistent. And so that's a big challenge, and it's true of every project. These projects can sometimes take just a few weeks, but sometimes they take months to complete, and the continuity is a big thing.
For me, episode 4, Throne Room, that's mine.
My favorite song, mine is Zam the Assassin from episode 2. It's got these great percussion parts and it's really funky.
I do like the Han and Leia theme. I think it's pretty cool.